Do we have any big questions that we want to debate over or discuss? Not debate, discuss. Anything that is pressing on you guys?
I actually have a question that came up today.
Mhm.
So I saw a question where it asks what's an oddly specific thing that makes you instantly happy. So I thought about it and I thought of my kids giving me kisses unexpectedly and it made me think about happiness in general. So the question I had is, what is happiness and can you have happiness without people or connections? Can your life still be fulfilled without those type of attachments and happiness?
Okay, so I love that you're asking that. I actually have this great resource called Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown that goes over all of these emotions and their definitions by her research and um, definition. And so happiness is one of them. So I'm just going to read this out and we can talk about whether we agree or not. But this book is such a great resource for emotions. I highly recommend anybody who wants to like do more emotional research get it. So she says on page 207, looking at the data we've collected, I would define the state of happiness as feeling pleasure, often related to the immediate environment or current circumstances. And so if we're going off of that as a descriptor, I would say that the environment matters to your happiness. I feel like it has to, right? Because if it's related to immediate environment or current circumstances, then it has to be reliant on whatever's in your reality at that time, right? And so or whatever you think about what's in your reality at that time. So to the first thing, what is happiness? Stealing it from Dr. Brene Brown, um, the pleasure you feel in your current circumstances, which I guess I'm not looking it up, but could sadness then be the displeasure you feel at your current circumstances? Maybe, possibly. So what was the other part of that question? You said, what is happiness? And,
Um, can your life still be fulfilled in happiness without attachment, so people or connection?
well, I think connection and attachment are two different things, honestly, because we attach to all types of things, but we don't necessarily connect with it. I think so many people are attaching and not connecting. Connecting takes like two people coming together interdependently, whereas like attachment is like I'm just gonna like hang on, you know? Um, but I do think that that question actually, can life be fulfilling, is actually a like fulfillment question, not a happiness question. Because I think you could have a very fulfilling life if you are in things that you find meaningful. And if you find meaning in no connections, you could be very fulfilled, I suppose, if you know what I mean? Potentially. Do I think that anybody were not made for lack of connection though? So like,
Well, I was thinking about it in a sense because everything, when I think of happiness, it's always people. Like it's always people coming into, that's the first thing that comes to my head every time. Or even with listening to music or watching movies, I always can relate it to a person. So then I'm just trying to figure out, can happiness be achieved without doing those connections?
well, so here's the other. I think it depends on how you define happiness versus joy because I'm gonna just jump back a page to what when she's taught Brene Brown, still reading out of Atlas of the Heart, talking about joy versus happiness because this was interesting. So, joy is a sudden, unexpected, short lasting, and high intensity. emotion. It is characterized by a connection with others, God, nature, or the universe. Joy expands our thinking and attention and fills us with a sense of freedom. So I wonder if the thing that we're like seeking out, calling happiness, is actually just joy. Because, well, according to this definition, it might be. Whereas happiness is the stable, longer lasting, normally result of effort. It's lower in intensity than joy and it's more self focused. With happiness, we feel a sense of being in control. Unlike joy, which is more internal, happiness seems more external and circumstantial. And so I think I think that we cannot experience full joy without full connection to God or to nature or to people. Joy, I think, necessitates connection. Happiness, though, I feel you could find happiness or at the very least contentment without those sort of connections.
Yeah, that
If we're
makes sense. Yeah, that
if
makes
we're going
sense.
off her
Hmm.
definitions, which
Because
I tend to like. Go ahead.
yeah, because if you think about it, if your personality is more introvert, then
Mine or just in
no, just
general?
in general, in general.
Um,
If your personality is more introvert, then you can easily find happiness because um you're just more low key. You don't need to go around having connections and you're just focusing on yourself versus like, but not, it won't really bring joy. Yeah, I get what you're saying. That makes sense.
Demita, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I was trying to think about where this would fit in with this, but a few years back, I went to California to visit my mom, and we went to this lake. And I mean, we always go to a lake or river or something. But anyhow, I was out in the lake, and her and I had been floating on our little inner tubes out in the middle of the lake. And then she went in, and I stayed out there. And I was just completely alone. Like there were people, closer to the shore and stuff. But in the spot I was at, there was just no one around. And I'm just in the middle of this lake on this inner tube. And there's nothing, no, phones, social media, no people, like nothing else out there. And I hadn't really come into my walk with God yet. Like, I mean, of course, you know, I was still praying and stuff, but not like as intently as I do now. And, but I'm just sitting out in the middle of the lake. And honestly, that's probably the happiest I think I've ever been because there was just no expectations, no requirements, nothing to do. Like I felt absolutely free just sitting there floating in this lake. Like I had nowhere else to be, nothing else to do. And it was just glorious. It felt good, it was like the perfect temperature and all that. So I just yes, exactly. It was just peaceful and yeah, and I just like I felt happy. I felt joy in that moment. And that had nothing to do with anyone. It was just me by myself out there doing the thing.
So it's funny you're saying that, and Amanda's comment about just peaceful. So there's a whole, this is the whole section is like places or emotions that we have when life is good. Joy, happiness, calm, contentment, gratitude, foreboding joy, which is super interesting, relief and tranquility, right? So perhaps what you are talking about is like calm, contentment, or tranquility. And it's not happiness, but it's also not quite happiness. So maybe it's, and I don't know if it's that. I'm going to read you the definitions because you're bringing up a really great point here. So, at tranquility may, oh, I'm going to read her commentary. Tranquility may be my new favorite emotion. Why? Check out the research definition. Tranquility is associated with the absence of demand and no pressure to do anything.
That's exactly what it was. And it was fabulous. It was like I'll never forget that moment just thinking that of like how absolutely at peace I was.
And so that's super interesting too, because if you're thinking about tranquility, let me take Tanya's question and ask it in regards to tranquility. Can we have true tranquility with someone else in present? Or is that something that requires solitude?
I've never felt that with another person present, so I don't know.
Right. Like there is something very tranquil to just being out in nature with the Lord and yourself. I think like the beach at night is one of the places I like the most just tranquility. Like it's just me, the Lord, the night sky, and the sound of the waves. And I'm like, life is good. Right. Life is good. Like this is a good life right here. And so I mean, I think that there is something to tranquility is tranquil because people ain't around. You know what I mean? Because like more people, more problems, you know? We love people. We do. We love people, but also they are messy and loud. They got their own stuff. And so this is actually a really, again, not quite trying to have a shameless plug here for this really, really great book, Atlas of the Heart, but like it's so good. I'm going to teach out of it because it's like the research here. It's also a really beautiful coffee table book, but like the research here is so excellent because it really gives us language to navigate. Like without this as a guide, we just think three different types of emotions are just happiness, but like actually not at all. And I noticed this about myself. I have no hard time, really no hard time getting into tranquility is easy for me, calm, contentment, gratitude, happiness, relief, all easy. Joy was hard for me for a long time. Um, And I think that's because the connectivity piece. And because I always for until the Lord healed a lot of things, felt like fundamentally disconnected from everything around me for a very long time. As a mom and a wife, I'd say that it would need to be alone. I kind of tend to agree with that because you're interrupted and it's just you with nothing else. Right. I was actually clicking around and saw Atlas was adding your emotional awareness space earlier today, ironically. Yes, I am the emotional awareness space. I am the emotional awareness course in the community. I'm adding the emotional discussion too. Yeah. Um, but you're right, Amanda, because the minute you add, especially like a child, to the space, you now are aware of a responsibility you have. Therefore, you have a demand. Therefore, according to the definition, you can't have tranquility because it's the absence of demand and no pressure to do anything. And just by the very nature of a child being there, you might feel a pressure to focus on them just because they're your kid and they become your focus. So I would say you're probably right. I don't know if tranquility can really be achieved in connection, but joy, I think, can almost only be achieved in connection with something. Father, nature, brethren, children, animals. Right, right, right. So I don't know, Tanya, does that answer it?
Yeah, but I was today years old when I found out there's other states and happiness is defined. Well, not even defined, but there's other definitions like tranquility was a new one for
Listen,
me.
I am telling you right now, I was today years old. Like when I was reading through this, I was like, oh my God. I was like, oh, I've been so upset with myself for like not being good at joy. And I was defining it wrong. I was like, this is what I really, this is why I'm going to teach this. I think everybody needs to know this. I think everybody needs to know these definitions. I think everybody needs to have the language. And if everybody doesn't want to read this book, I at least want to do my part to teach it. as a staple of this ministry because I think it's super important. And so I'm so glad that you asked because it's coming up all over the place. And and out of here, some of my like staple work is discussed, like things that I will always be working on with the brethren, places we go when we fall short, which is shame, self-compassion, perfectionism, guilt, humiliation, and embarrassment, because the old identity, the shame-based identity, always is functioning in those things. So that's a thing that I'm always talking about with the brethren. And then places we go when we search for connection, which is belonging, fitting in, connectedness, disconnection, insecurity, invisibility, and loneliness. That's stuff that's always coming up, old satanic strongholds. So I'm always going to that. And then places we go when the heart is open, love, lovelessness, heartbreak, trust, self-trust, betrayal, defensiveness, flooding, and hurt. And so like those things are all emotions that the people I work with kind of live out of for a very long time that like shapes their identity. And it comes from the wounded space. Like that's all up in the wounded space. Those are the wounds, right? So it is my job to talk about this. But places we go when life is good, there are so many places, and we don't realize it. So I'm glad that you asked. I'm glad that you were thinking about it. Um, but yeah, it's a really productive read, honestly. Um, and I tend to rely on other people's really good research for emotional things because as much as I think that it's important and emotional awareness is necessary, um, and I know it because it's part of identity work, so you kind of have to be able to identify. I'm always trying to do like values and morals over feelings. So like they're important, but that's not my like wheelhouse per se. You know, like I'm trying to get you grounded on the truth. And feelings are not fact, but they are very good indicators. So, you know, I think it's important, but also I'm not going to be coaching it. Though, Tanya, quite frankly, if you find it super interesting, you might have a call. You might have a ministry in emotional awareness and regulation. And I think that's a worthwhile thing to consider. But yeah, so I would say that we didn't actually answer though. Okay, so really quickly, joy needs people, needs connection, rather, I should say. Tranquility, no. Happiness, maybe. If you're an extrovert, maybe your happiness comes from the brethren. And if you're an introvert, maybe your happiness comes from not quite the brethren.
The other day, Eliana, she asked me, um, she said, Mom, do you are you happier now that you have kids, or were you happier whenever you didn't have any kids? And I was like, wow, why is my 4-year-old asking me this? But I told her, I'm like, Sissy, I said, I was able to spend a lot of my life alone and a lot of my life married to someone else that I had a stepdaughter, but I didn't see her all the time. I said, so mommy was able to do a lot of things that I thought were fun or I was able to like do with other people that at the time made me happy. I said, but now that I have you, I said, I feel more fulfilled with my life and I'm happier now that I have you than whenever I was single.
That makes sense with the definition, honestly, because it's more self-focused, it's stable, longer lasting. So that actually makes a lot of sense that part of your happiness is tied up in the fact that you are a mom, specifically to your daughter. Which makes sense because if anything were to happen to your daughter, you would be very sad, probably. You would be unhappy, right? And so the thing about happiness is if, and I do believe Brene Brown's onto something here, it's external. It's very easy for us to be unhappy because the external circumstances are low key out of our control a lot of the times. And I say it a lot, and you guys are all moms on here. A mom is only as happy as her unhappiest child. Like I say this all the time because it's like children, you are now wearing your heart outside of your body. Like there are things you care about more than yourself walking around as independent entities that was once inside of you and is part of you, and you are part of it, right? Or him or her. Sorry. I have a bad habit of calling children it's pronouns, right? He, she, it. Okay, they all go together. But really, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And so the happiness, and I don't think that to your point, Tanya, when you said like, oh, when my children give me unexpected kisses and it makes me happy. Um, but I will say, I think that the sort of key there is like the longer lasting sort of element of it. Because I experience a lot of joy when my sister sends me her kids. They give me a lot of joy, and it is a quick, like short, unexpected, very high intensity, like they're like the joy of my life. I say this all the time, and I didn't really realize it until I started reading and thinking about things that give me joy, because I don't access joy a lot. It doesn't come out a lot. But my nieces and my nephew give me a lot of joy. But I wouldn't say they make me happy. They probably they make my sister very happy. My sister is so happy being a mother. So to that point, Amanda, like, there's a long standingness to it. I don't know that my nieces and nephew make me happy, but they give me so much joy, which I think is an interesting sort of distinction. One I wouldn't have been able to make having not read this book, quite frankly. And I think a lot of the time, like, why people get so hooked on like new romances is because there's a lot of joy at the beginning of the thing. It's like it's new and it's quick and it's like bah, 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 bah. And then as you get into like marriage or like longevity with a partner, you kind of move out of joy because it's quick. And then you move into maybe happiness or contentment. Well, your kids are adults, so you got a lot of emotions probably going on. Like your kids are full on adults. So that's like a very hard I think that we don't talk enough about how difficult it probably is to be the parent of an adult child. I think that's such a difficult thing because it's like I'm still your mom, but also I'm your friend, maybe I'm your employer, like also you might know more than me now, like you might be more of a professional than I am, like what do I do with this? Maybe.
Or they still know everything, but then when things don't work out the way they think that it will, then they come back and can you fix this? So
Right,
annoyance,
because
that's
like
another emotion that comes with parenting.
right. Like, because that's still my mom. Like, can you handle it? Right. Like, there's still certain things you just like go to your parent for. It's like,
Yep. No matter, even me, like I was just calling my mom the other day, Mom.
right. Right. I was talking to my sister about that because she was like, there's just some things you want your mom for. Like, my sister was saying, like, yeah, well, when I was pregnant, my husband was right in the room, or when I was in labor, I was in delivery, my husband's right there in the room with me, and I'm texting mom. And I was like, true, like, that's a good point. And so there is just some things that, like, you need your mom for. And of course, to like bring it to the Lord, like there's just everything you need the Lord for, quite frankly. There's like nothing you can do without him. If you want to call your parent, go to the Lord first. But no, I think that's a great question there, Tanya. That's a really, really great question. Can life be fulfilled without connections or attachments? I think the answer has to be yes. But I also think that's extremely subjective because, like, what is it to be fulfilled? What is fulfillment? Actually, we might have a definition for that. We might have a definition for that. Let me look. I think we do. Maybe we don't. Fulfillment is a tough thing to. No, we do not. We do not. Gratitude, love, trust, and meaningful connection. But I think that what's meaningful and what's fulfilling is like one of the great philosophical debates of all the great philosophers. Is like, do we need meaning? Is meaning something we find? Is it something we invent? Like, there's a lot of things that I feel like come out of the meaning discussion. Like, what is meaning? I mean, that's a whole like school of discussion. What is meaning? What is meaningful? You know? Um, and fulfillment and meaning and purpose, like they all kind of go hand in hand and hand in hand there, which we can discuss if we want. Um, we don't have to. I guess that actually, Tanya, if we're okay on that first part, I want to follow it up with a question I actually was going to ask at some point, not necessarily today, which is happiness the highest goal? Or is there something else that we should be striving for?
My goal is that tranquil joy. I want to feel that all the time.
To that point, I say, you would probably need to disconnect from everywhere that you have responsibility. Right? Like Ralph Waldo Emerson, I think it is, writes this essay on it's like on solitude. And Henry David Thoreau wrote Walden, and they both have to do with like the tranquility of nature and solitude. But it would require the sacrifice of everything that you're connected to and have responsibilities to. So you would need to like leave your kids, maybe leave your husband, um, leave your job or your business. Like it would be a huge, it would be such a sacrifice, I think, that you would potentially lose the tranquility component of it because you're like, yeah, I'm alone and I'm peaceful and I'm tranquil and I have no demands and I have no responsibilities, but I also have no connection and I have no one. And I don't think that I think it would end up, we would lose the tranquility and probably descend into like some version of madness because like solitary confinement is a torture tactic. You know what I mean? I kind of feel like that. Tranquility is a statement for short term. As I'm speaking it out, I've not thought about it prior to this, but I wonder if it is a shorter term state or like a place that we visit but we don't live in
Like if
until
you're
eternity,
like if
obviously.
you're alone long enough, you're gonna be thinking more.
Right, right. Like it will lose the peaceful quality It'll become like the yellow wallpaper. Have you guys ever read the yellow wallpaper?
No. What's it about?
Yellow Wallpaper is this really cool short story by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. And it's about this woman who descends into madness. And she descends into madness because she's locked and isolated in this room with yellow wallpaper. And she's supposed to be like getting better. And she sort of spirals into insanity where she sees a woman coming out of the yellow wallpaper. It's a really brilliant text, honestly. Um, because it's like if you sit with yourself long enough, you do kind of go a little crazy. And they've done research experiments where they'll put people alone in the dark and everybody cracks, loses it, with the exception of people who speak out loud to themselves because it reminds them that they're not a thing that doesn't exist. Invisible Man, also by Ralph Ellison, I believe. That's a long text. Deals with that concept of the invisible man. Like if you are put aside enough, like do you even exist at all? And so I wonder if tranquility is an actual long-term tranquility, I suppose, by the definition, is actually an achievable state. I don't know that it is. I actually will go further to say I think that it is not because I've noticed this about myself because I live a fairly tranquil life. Like my reality is very chill. Just me and my cat, you know? I live by myself. I have very little like day-to-day responsibilities that aren't showing up here. I'm not beholden to a lot of people, is what I should say. Like there's that. And sometimes when I'm in my just my life space, I like feel like I'm going a little stir crazy and I like have to put myself out among the throngs of people. So that was the point. I agree, but aren't we going to have that in the new kingdom? So actually that was the point with the eternity. The thing that's really tricky there is that the cognitive ability is so much higher that we're all like attuned and atoned to each other. Like we're all there aren't the same kind of barriers. So like even when I'm alone, I'm not an isolated entity within myself. The collective is much more pressing, if that makes sense. And so it's like anybody who's had near death experiences or you know, you don't need to speak with your mouth. You speak mind to mind. So you're automatically more connected and in tune even though you're like living in a peaceful, tranquil state. Um, that the experiences, the emotions are heightened there, and there are no negative, like there's no like heavier, sort of lower frequency emotions around the Father. We get that here because we're in a fallen kingdom. But that's why, like, most people, when they have the near death experience, they don't want to come back here. They're like, it's so everything warm and bright and multicolored and tranquil and loving and just everything that they don't want to leave. Right. So it is, we should perhaps amend. Tranquility is a state meant for the short term in the flesh body in this dimension. Tranquility is a natural byproduct of being with the Father and a forever state in the eternity, perhaps. Perhaps, right? This is a working thesis here. It's a good point, though.
So I guess maybe that's what I want is what's
You want to go
coming
home?
later.
You
Yeah,
want to
I
go
want to
home.
go home.
You want to go home. And I think we all do, right? You want to go home. And I think we all do, right? Like it's this tough thing of like how do we bring heaven to earth with these watered down emotions and things that we have. Um, or I don't know, I guess I shouldn't call them watered down, but like the heavy emotions exist here, you know. Um, it is crazy too because like I feel like there's a concept that's gonna better explain this called foreboding joy. And the point I was going to make was um still places we go in life is good, foreboding joy. But it's this idea that the good emotions can always get bad, quote, quote, bad, quote, quote, good. But the bad emotions can always get worse, and you can just like live in that sad, depressed state here on earth with the way we kind of function now. And foreboding joy is this concept. So I'll just read that to you. It is what it sounds like, waiting for the other shoe to drop kind of a thing. But it is I think worth our consideration in this chat. Foreboding joy is if you're afraid to lean into good news, wonderful moments, and joy, if you find yourself waiting for the other shoe to drop, you are not alone. It's called foreboding joy, and most of us experience it. Right? And it's this idea that you're afraid to experience the good thing because you know the bad thing's coming. And I feel like because we live in a fallen world, pain can also be on the like back end of pleasure, right? That's my constant state. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Um, it is according to the text. Um, Foreboding joy is one of those practically universal experiences that everyone thinks of as something only they do. A few people don't experience it, but most of us do. And when it comes to parents, 95% of the parents we interviewed experience foreboding joy with their children. So, as a parent of two little children, it makes sense that that is your constant state. It is a tension, parenthood, because it's like, I want to keep you safe and I can't. Physically impossible. I'm going to do the best I can, but can't fully. I want you to stay small, but also you got to grow up because you're growing up anyway. I want to prepare you for the world and I want to hide you from it. So it would make sense that you have a lot of foreboding joy. You're experiencing the joy, and also you know it's not gonna last. You know, I mean, yeah, it's a tough thing. I psychoanalyze things all the time. Part of why I don't have kids and why I was saying even at like 20 years old I wasn't sure I wanted kids was because it's hard. Like emotionally very difficult outside of the surviving, keeping them alive, raising them to be good humans and also aligned with their purpose and their self. Like there's so much that goes into parenting. It's why I think we started this series with parenting. There's a million ways you can do it wrong and no way you can do it right. And for me, that's just such a huge gamble. Like that's crazy. I'm like, oh. And so the other emotion I think that maybe goes with it is bittersweetness. Bittersweetness might be part of the place people go in parenting because it's that aligned like with foreboding joy. And I'm sure you've had bittersweetness when something ends or something's over, you're like you're happy it's done, but also you're sad it's done. Also you you're feeling all the things, we can hold those two emotions at the same time. Um, I will just read it also because I like this. Right, a lot of bittersweet. Right. Tanya, I'm so glad you brought us on this discussion. This is so fun. I think it's fun anyway. So this is why I bring us here. Bittersweet is a mixed feeling of happiness and sadness, with very few exceptions. Developmental milestones leave me, that's Brene Brown, feeling bittersweet. I asked folks across my social media channels to share some examples of experiences that felt bittersweet for them, and we received more than 40,000 beautiful, heartfelt comments. I don't think I was fully aware of the depth of humanity that lives in the curves of this emotion. Here are some: watching children grow up, leaving a job, divorce ending a relationship, graduating, letting go of friendships that aren't working, moving, death of a loved one, teachers watching students graduate, retiring, coming home from vacation, right? And I think those are such good examples of it because it's like you're happy and sad at the same time. Like this is great and also sort of terrible. Um and and so it is. I think most of the people upgrading your car, yeah, leaving an apartment or buying a house. It's like, leaving your singlehood to go into marriage, or leaving your first job to go to your second, or even something to the effect of like going from being a mom or a dad of one to two, right? Like it's the dynamic changes. And you're like, I love this dynamic, but I also am happy about this dynamic, but I'm sad I'm losing this dynamic, right? Like it is foreboding joy and bittersweetness, I think are, well, a lot of us all the time are dealing with it. And so to the point about what is happiness and can we be fulfilled and these things, I think you kind of can't have happiness without sadness. You kind of can't have joy sometimes without the awareness that it's not going to last because it is fleeting. Joy is that short, quick emotion. And so to the question I asked, is happiness the highest goal or is there something beyond it? I never think happiness is the goal. I always think truth is the goal. I always think understanding is the goal. I think intimacy with the Lord is the goal. Intimacy with yourself is the goal. Like those are everything I do functions out of the fact that I think those are the goals, right? Like you guys know this all the time. I'm a one-trick pony. All I care about is, do you know the Lord and how well? Do you know yourself and how well? And can I help you know him and yourself better? Right? And so that's not often what the world is worried about, which is why I tend to have a very lonely existence, quite frankly, because I'm so busy focusing on helping everybody else understand that and also doing it with myself. That connection with everything else kind of gets left out of it, you know? And it is a bittersweet thing. Like that is a bittersweet thing. It's a bittersweet thing to be called as a prophet of the Lord because it's like you're gonna suffer. Like you're doing the great work, but you gonna suffer. Like it ain't gonna be the fun times. Like happiness is perhaps not the thing there. And so I I personally, it's not that I don't care about happiness, because happiness is nice. It's not that I don't care about joy, because joy is nice. It's just at the end of the day, those that has never been it for me. I don't care if I'm happy about this or not. I care if I'm obedient to the Lord. I don't care if I like it, really, at the end of the day.
So do we think happiness can be achieved like as a collective? So let's say utopia.
Oh, no.
No.
No,
Okay.
no,
Yeah,
because every utopia is a dystopia in this
yeah.
reality. You
Hmm.
know, every utopia being a perfect society, right? Um, there is no perfection in this world. So you can't have a perfect society. In order to have a perfect society, you have to have a perfect entity. And that doesn't exist here. And I mean, it hasn't existed since Christ walked the earth, and he only for 33 years. And before that, it hasn't existed since the Lord left the temple in Ezekiel 8, 9, and 10. So there's a reason why they say, like, there's a reason why every dystopia novel, starts out with a perfect society.
And yeah, that's the
Being,
thing, because that's why I want to ask. Because when
yeah,
I think of utopia, I'm like, that's a myth. I don't,
right.
I don't see how that's possible without being with the Lord. Yeah.
And literature's been grappling with that for like the last 100 or so years. Like Brave New World, 1984, even like the Hunger Games. Those are all dystopias. They've looked at it. Because we're just so fixated with power and control here, and also with pleasure. Viktor Frankl is like one of my favorite philosophers. He's a logotherapist, father of logotherapy, existential philosopher, and I think everybody should know him. But he makes these really great points that you, on the surface, you have like pursuit of pleasure. A little deeper, level two, you have pursuit of power and control. And then deeper, you have the pursuit of meaning. And I have added to that. I have my little theory work over here, but at the mid, like the bullseye is like quintessence, which is fear of the Lord, bringing maturity, right? But again, that's me adding my own philosophy to an existing model. But right, you can't have a utopia without lying to somebody because you have to make them think that this is for them. Oh, The Giver by Lewis Lowry is a really great example of that one. The Giver is a great example of that. So, yeah, no, there is no such thing as a utopia in this life because we can't have peace in this life. We have two conflicting, warring kingdoms. We can't have peace in this life. So we couldn't have perfection in this life because perfection by its very nature means that there's nothing imperfect. And humans are imperfect in the flesh, and the kingdom of Satan is far from perfect, quite frankly. It's dysfunctional and depraved. And so, yeah, we can't have utopia. In we can't have utopia anywhere, like not even in literature. Not even in literature. The Lord of the Flies deals with this. Lord of the Flies by William Gold. What's his last name? Something with a G-O. Um, I think they're just making this on Netflix. William Goldings. That's it. William Goldings. Lord of the Flies. It's this idea that these boys crash on this desert island, and they could have a utopia, but what do? Power and control. One tribe versus another. I won't spoil the book for you, or the movie, or the Netflix show if you watch it. But it doesn't end great. So yeah, I mean, yeah, no, utopia is always dystopia. Perfection is impossibly untrue. Perfectionism is actually right. We read it in high school and it was so disturbing to me. I did not care for Lord of the Flies, quite frankly. I did not like Piggy. I did not like Ralph. I did not like Simon. I did not like any of them. Okay. It was not, and it wasn't meant to, really. You're not supposed to like it. I think you're supposed to consider the dangers of society, quite frankly, with it. But perfectionism, while we're talking about why utopia can't exist, why perfection can't exist, um, is because it's born out of shame. Oh, that's funny. Right. Perfectionism. Perfectionism is a self-destructive and addictive belief system that fuels this primary thought. If I look perfectly, live perfectly, work perfectly and do everything perfectly, I can avoid or minimize the painful feelings of shame, judgment, and blame. Right? So even in this day and age, perfection comes out of the root of shame, guilt, condemnation. Perfectionism is a trauma response. I'm always talking to people about this because if you have and I have this too, if you think you can be perfect, if you just try a little harder, you just do a little bit better, that's an impossibility. You cannot be. Perfection does not exist.
Yeah,
Utopia.
I recently learned that like perfection, like you just move your goalposts. You keep going
Where'd you learn
with you.
it? I knew the answer to that. I was digging. Um, but look, so I'm going to read this because it's so good. Shame is the birthplace of perfectionism. Perfectionism is not striving to be our best or working toward excellence. Healthy striving is internally driven. Perfectionism is externally driven by a simple but potentially all-consuming question: what will people think? Right? And so anytime I see perfectionism cropping up in the brethren, I know there's a root of shame. There's an identity of shame. There's the old identity that has to go. And so these absolutes, right? Absolute perfection, utopian society, moral goodness. They're not possible standards. We're never going to hit them, right? We don't we don't touch the extremes. We live in the median. Like we live in the mess, you know? Um, and that's why humans are so messy. I mean, we really are. We really, really are. But what same, I was looking around at my peers for a while. For what standard of comparison? Or like perfectionism?
Oh, I meant after the Lord of the Flies thing. I
Oh,
was like, I don't trust none of y'all.
fair. Honestly. Well, you know what? And if you've been studying Jeremiah with us, you know that the Lord says that. The Lord is like, don't trust your neighbors. If you've studied Revelation, if you've studied Matthew or Mark, like you know that brother will betray brother and father will betray son and mother will betray daughter. And so it is something to this tension of like care but not too much, trust but not too deeply. Like it's a hard balance. I don't know that we can really fully attain it. It's a hard balance. It is. I mean, because it's you look at your peers and you're like, are you going to be an instrument of help to me? Are you going to be an instrument of harm to me? Like, what are we doing here? You know? Um, And again, shameless plug. I wish I was getting paid to promote this. Atlas of the Heart is just so good for the human condition of emotional places that we go. Um, so good. So thoughtful. So thoughtful. So well researched. Um, there is a political liberal slant because Brene Brown is liberal, but I just, let that be what it is. But yeah, no. Um, That was good. That was good stuff. Other thoughts? Anything coming up? I mean, we really kind of, I don't know that. Can we come to the like agreement that happiness is not even close to the highest goal? There's better things that we should be striving for and attaining or wanting to attain.
Yes, I could agree.
Yeah, I think now that we've heard some definitions, then definitely we have more to work with than just, I think maybe we always just label everything that feels good to us as happiness when it turns out there's different levels, there's different things.
Right. Actually, she makes the point at one point in the text where she's like, happy, sad, and mad were the terms that kept coming up. Like that's the extent of our language around emotion. And I found that to be true in my own life. Like back in 2018, when I first started therapy, you guys have heard me say this story. I didn't have language for my emotions. Like I did not have it. And so she was like, Michelina, how are you? And I'm like, I'm fine. And she's like, yeah, no, you can't be fine. I read about you in the news this morning. Like, you are not fine. And I was like, I don't know what to tell you. I am fine. And she had to give me this paper of faces. And I was like, oh, scared, I'm anxious, I'm confused, I'm embarrassed, I'm ashamed, I'm miserable, I'm worried. And it wasn't like I was trying to lie to her. It was I didn't have there was a linguistic disconnect. And so once I had the language, I knew what it was. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm all these things. And she's like, there we go. And it was one of the things that I realized where I was like, at that point, at that point, I had taught English for 7 years. I had a bachelor's in English, I had a master's in education, and I had a master's in English literature. And yet and still, I could not take the emotions and apply them to myself and speak out what I was feeling. And that is when I was like, if this is true of me, this is probably true of a lot of people. Cue identity work and personal development work. Because I was like, holy crap. Like, this is kind of crazy that humans don't even know themselves and don't even have language for themselves, you know? And we do tend to communicate through language. And so the more we sophisticate up our language, the better we can get at expressing ourselves. Language is 70% nonverbal, so really we're working with 30% there, but that's a story for another day. But yeah, so good. Oh, good. That was I'm glad. I'm glad you brought us there. That was fun. That was really fun. Any other thoughts right now? Anything coming up on on happiness, foreboding joy, bittersweetness, utopias, tranquility? All right. Well, this has been a great philosophy existential hour. Um, I'm a fan. I'm a fan. If you are coming to Bible study tomorrow, 7 o'clock, topical study Friday, 7 o'clock, coffee and chat, 11 a.m. on Saturday, and Bible study Sunday at 7. And if anything comes up that you're thinking about and you want to shoot me a DM that I can help you work through, shoot me a DM. But other than that, anything else for the good of the order?
No. Have a good night.
You too. I'm gonna drink my half-gallon of water here that we're still working through to get through day 30. Other than that, though, ciao, fam.
Bye, guys.